think a lot of people's first interaction with a violent game isn't by playing it but instead through hearing about its reputation. Manhunt, Mortal Kombat, Doom. Growing up, the infamy of many of these games trumped any other detail. I remember the first time I got my hands on GTA 5. I was 11 or so and had to say it was a gift from my uncle when buying from my local game shop. The drive back home may as well have been me smuggling drugs across Border Patrol. Once home, I put it in my Xbox and I was fine. The game is in no way bad, don't get me wrong. GTA 5 still holds up as being one of the more realistic games of the last generation of consoles. But was I gagging at the sight of virtual headshots? No. I had fallen for the hype. The promise that what I was about to play, the acts I were about to commit, were going to look so lifelike that any child my age playing it would be irreparably changed into a killing machine. None of us did, of course, and those who may have were already failed by the state of mental health care or the ease of access to guns way before they even touched the games in question. This has been the cycle for a while now, setting the expectations for simulated death so high that when it's finally released, it is almost doomed to fail in being completely realistic. Even a game like Manhunt, said to be so disturbing that countries like Australia banned it entirely, is ultimately bound to the technology of the time. Oh, the PS3 horror! And then, in April of last year, for a moment at least, we were fooled by the trailer for a little game called Unrecord. For those not in the know, Unrecord is the soon-to-be debut for indie game studio Drama. Footage of the game was first shared on October 12, 2022, with a full-length gameplay trailer released on April 19th the next year. What little we know of the story is that you play as a tactical police officer on some sort of investigation. An investigation that, as the trailer more than shows off, will involve taking that gun of yours and shooting some bad guys. And immediately, people were skeptical of its legitimacy. How much was in-game graphics or full motion video? When would this game be released, if ever? And most importantly for us, was this real? To Drama's credit, they backed up the game by showing the environmental assets used in the trailer, and I gotta admit, it looks promising, even photorealistic, but my focus and concerns for this game have little to do with graphical fidelity or motion blur. Instead, I watch the footage of this game and I ask, for an FPS aiming for photorealism, why specifically use the aesthetic of police body cam footage?
That's the sound of the police! Whoop, whoop. That's the sound of the beast! Whoop, whoop. That's the sound of the police! Whoop, whoop. That's the sound of the beast! Whoop, whoop. That's the sound of the police! Whoop, whoop. That's the sound of the beast! Whoop, whoop. That's the sound of the police! Whoop, whoop. That's the sound of the beast!
While there's an obvious answer, games often feature cops, both as protagonists or cannon fodder, I believe we can dig deeper from reframing the question from why has this been done to what is its effect on the audience. This question is a mutation of a much larger and ancient one. Does media shape our reality? To simplify decades of analysis, theory and social experiments, all answers point to yes. Many of our parents can probably name countless horror stories of a once innocent person watching the wrong film or playing the wrong game, and then waking up the next day changed, something now incapable of empathy and only desiring destruction. These stories are just that, of course, stories, but while certainly hyperbolic, they hint towards a certain truth that art can drive people to acts of violence. Following the 1915 release of Birth of a Nation, a film similarly notorious for acts of monstrosity, evidence suggests that the then defunct KKK could thank its resurgence in part to the film. On the impact of the film on the Klan, Desmon Ang writes, 6 months after the Birth of a Nation's premiere, William J. Simmons founded the second Ku Klux Klan atop Stone Mountain, Georgia. Inspired by the recent lynching of Leo Frank, as well as newspaper stories about the film, the Methodist preacher declared himself Imperial Wizard of the Invisible Empire on Thanksgiving Day 1915. Simmons chose the day strategically in anticipation of the film's premiere in Atlanta, and marched to the premiere with his fellow Klansmen in tow. But perhaps more well known than this is the film's influence on the medium. Adverts pitched the movie as an absolute spectacle, with screenings attended by members of the US Supreme Court, Congress, and even then President Woodrow Wilson. In fact, he had it be the first film screened at the White House. At said screening, Wilson reportedly praised the movie as like writing history with lightning. My only regret is that it is all terribly true. But with the advent of the internet came the next iteration of rationalising brutality, with the defence of simply depicting reality. The video hosting website Lively, once dedicated to working in the interest of civilian journalists in the years following 9/11, quickly became host to videos of ordinary people meeting gory ends in occupational hazards, street collisions, and body cam footage. Similar websites spawned off and clouded much of the atmosphere of the early internet, and to this day one need not look past Instagram to find on their timeline a litany of lethal car crash videos. This era inspired a lot of post 9/11 media in general, with movies like Cloverfield recognising the unique horror of filming the destruction of a city with a flimsy camcorder. The camera brought down to the same level of vulnerability as its subjects, the cruel intimacy that only the medium of video can truly capture. Sure, found footage films were a mainstay in cinema before 9/11, but no story of a haunted forest or alien abduction can match the scale of unfiltered reality. But if the found footage genre emphasised vulnerability and personalisation in the wake of 9/11, the first-person shooter took a radically opposite stance when it came to the unending war following the attacks. In the article The Labour of Surveillance, Peter Asaro talks about the use of military drones through the lens of their pilots. What makes drone operators particularly interesting as subjects is not only that their work combines surveillance and killing, but also that it sits at an intersection of multiple networks of power and technology, and visibility and invisibility. And their work is a focal point for debates about the ethics of killing, the effectiveness of military strategies for achieving political goals, the cultural and political significance of lethal robotics, and public concerns over the further automation of surveillance and killing. The basis of his article is an exploration into the unique separation drone pilots experience from the places they fly to and the people they kill. Even a sniper ultimately has to be on the ground. Similarly, military shooters, no matter how real their digital guts can look, keep the player at a wide and important distance that can affect what the player ultimately takes away from the experience. In practice, two games come to mind. In the game Spec Ops: The Line, there's a mission where your character is surrounded and must, despite destructive consequences, use a mortar filled with white phosphorus. In Call of Duty Modern Warfare, your team makes a route to an extraction point, and so to help make your way, the player takes control of an AC-130. In both games, you're suddenly transported into a black and white UV world, one where the gameplay gimmicks of a first-person shooter, like jump or sprint or take cover, have no say. They are simply accessories to your most primal actions: aim and shoot. In Spec Ops, you return to the ground where you must walk through the charred remains of your work. Tens of deaths, dozens more of injuries, hundreds more civilians. In Call of Duty, your team gets out. You all return to base. Your job is done. Much in the same way the Manhunt series adopted the cinematic language of 90s snuff films, these two games wear their decade's aesthetic of death and grainy black and white. In many ways then, Unrecord follows in this tradition, but while the war games of the early 2000s fed into the narrative of an unending war on terror, Unrecord speaks to a similar but different ideology. Propaganda. For as long as there has been technology, there has been those who use it for their own political ends. This is not strictly a right or left issue, mind you, it's a human issue. Humans are just too good at finding and placing meaning in whatever we make. Art is a reflection of the artist, and each artist holds an ideology. Communication theorist Marshall Mcluhan illustrates this idea in his book Understanding Media, The Extensions of Man, with this example. Say you have a light bulb. Now, the light bulb obviously contains by itself no content. Content in this case being how a YouTube channel may have videos. But the light bulb is instead a medium, a means of which information, in our case the presence of light, can be communicated. A dark room by itself is just a dark room, but plug in a light bulb and suddenly it is much more. It carries a message, the opportunity for light and thus a place for a group of people to mingle and congregate. To quote the man himself, a light bulb creates an environment by its mere presence. So, if we replace the light bulb with the medium of film, what do we get? If you get mugged and no one else is around to see, you'd be pissed, sure, but other than that, nothing much would happen long term. Its content would be lacking. But if someone were to see you getting mugged and film it, and then have that footage broadcasted first just in your neighbourhood, and then shortly after the whole of the country, what once was just a one-off incident of petty crime has been superseded by the fear that the things we see happening away from us have been brought inside our very homes. A fear that influences policy making, public opinion, and conceptions about what types of people commit what types of crime. All this made possible through the medium of film. The medium is the message. And so, naturally, when a white zeitgeist stricken with paranoia around enslaved black people and the supposed threat they hold to white women has the funding and technology to produce a major motion picture, the film mirrors that paranoia and casts the Klan as its protagonist. The message? These people are to be feared and eradicated. When that same zeitgeist, having used minstrelsy to mock black people, develops their first talkie, a movie with sound at its main selling point. Even if the movie plot focuses on the relationship of a Jewish jazz singer and his overbearing father, blackface still makes an appearance. The message, these people are a costume. And hundreds of years afterwards, when it has never been easier to see black and brown bodies destroyed, be it on the news or on your phone or in your games, when the powerful sit in cowardly denial of history's loudest genocide, the message is clear. These people are expendable. Am I saying that this game will cause a sudden increase in police killings? No. But history has proven that if you get fed an idea long enough, your reality morphs to reflect it to let it become normal. Believe me when I tell you this, none of this is normal, and it can be stopped.